When I first watched Predator as a 7-year-old child, the movie both fascinated and terrified me. I had no idea that the film involved an alien killer and was just expecting the typical Arnie action film that I had already become accustomed to. These were films like Commando, Raw Deal or Conan, where Schwarzenegger would single-handedly crush his enemies and see them driven before him. However, in Predator, Arnold was not depicted as the single-man army, and instead had a team of other 80s action heroes that I already knew. These included Bill Duke from Commando, Sonny Landham from 48 Hours, Jesse Ventura from Professional Wrestling, and Carl Weathers from the Rocky franchise. Therefore, when I began watching the film, I felt safe behind this unit of ultimate tough guys. After all, how could an already near invincible action hero surrounded by a team like this be vulnerable? As the narrative progressed, however, it became apparent to me that something was off about this film. It did not just seem like an action film, but had a horror movie feel that I did not really associate with Schwarzenegger. I would get a chill every time the camera cut to the Predator's thermal vision and you would hear that unearthly sound effect that seemed like the creature could look through your very soul. I shared in the protagonist's anxiety as they looked into the trees with dread. But most of all, I was awestruck by just how easily this monster massacred these menacing men. Just 1 hour into the movie, and Dutch's entire rescue team were not only dead, but killed in the most gruesome fashion. This alien antagonist did the impossible. He made my childhood hero look vulnerable, a notion that terrified me to my very core. Despite my trepidation, I could not look away from this movie, and my fascination with Predator began. Many years later, the fear of this character has gone, but the fascination remains. This franchise has since spawned a plethora of sequels that all seem to have their own horrific moments, but which will make my top 5? When exploring the most horrific moments in any film franchise, it is important to define what is meant by horror. According to numerous film websites, horror movies depict disturbing or dark subject matter while seeking to elicit responses of fear, terror, disgust, shock or suspense from their viewers. Their plots often involve the intrusion of an evil force, event, or individual into the everyday world. Their antagonists are commonly monstrous or supernatural malevolent beings. Further to this, film philosopher Noel Carroll once said, "A horror story resides in establishing the existence of the monster and in disclosing its horrific properties. Once this has been established, the monster generally has to be confronted, and the narrative is driven by the question of whether the creature can be destroyed." Although 1987's Predator meets the majority of these definitions, film websites do not list it as a horror, but an action-adventure science fiction movie. In this video, I will rank my top 5 most horrifying moments from the franchise as I aim to bring the horror back to us Predator fans. Rather conveniently, my first entry is from the original movie and occurs just after Dutch's entire rescue team are killed. Upon delivering one of his now most infamous and quotable lines, Schwarzenegger's character finds himself injured and alone, trying to escape the Predator's clutches through the dense, maze-like jungle. I believe that a lot of 1979's Alien sold its horror on the campaign line that in space, no one can hear you scream. Correspondingly, I feel that the vastness of Predator's jungle creates a similar horrific atmosphere. In this instance, the jungle becomes a labyrinth where it is hard to find your way. Everything looks the same as you become lost amongst the vegetation. Therefore, as Dutch runs through the trees, we wonder if he can escape from a being that has the benefit of his higher vantage points. Director John McTiernan masterfully builds the tension in this scene through his fast-paced music and tracking shots, which match the urgency of the protagonist's actions. Our trepidation is intensified further through the editing as we cross-cut to the Predator's POV, gaining on the hero. With each edit, the Predator seems to be homing in on Alan Schaefer, which greatly adds to the audience's unease. At this point, it is literally upon our hero, and we fear the worst until a fool saves his life. We immediately feel safer when nothing seems to follow him as he swims out of the water. Without the score, this scene contrasts the loud sounds from the sequence that preceded it, and it possesses a sense of tranquility. Exhausted, Dutch slumps onto the bank, and we share in his relief. However, it is short-lived, as the camera eerily frames the water in the background as we wonder if the predator will swim out into focus. Worse than that, however, we have a jump moment as the creature crashes into the water. The ominous score begins, and our relief dissipates as the creature's dreadlock appendages emerge from the water. As Dutch searches for his non-existent weapon, we realise he is helpless and share in his vulnerability. All that the most powerful action hero of the 80s can do is hide and hope for the best. As the predator walks onto land, it is the first time that the audience really see him in his entirety, and we marvel at his appearance. When I first watched these scenes as a child, I could not decipher what I was looking at, probably because I was watching from behind the couch, but to me, Predator looked like a biomechanical alien robot hybrid. A true monster, with an electrical current surging across its body, a technological device on its arm, and servos moving mechanical components around as it walked. We are incredibly tense at this scene as the creature scans its surroundings before staring directly at Dutch. We can only assume that our hero has been spotted in a tangled mess amongst the roots of the tree. Oddly, however, the creature continues to survey the area until he spots a heat signature, possibly the heartbeat of Dutch. As it takes aim, we fear the worst until it blasts some fallen logs before a ferret-like creature scurries out and the predator stomps off to our relief. He couldn't see him. It is a whole 7 minutes after Billy's off-screen death that we finally see his horrific corpse. Due to this, we have forgotten about him and are shocked when we come face to face with his bloodied and lifeless visage, which drops right in front of the camera. This serves as a jump moment for a number of reasons. Firstly, it unexpectedly appears after Dutch prepares his traps for the predator, therefore we are in no way prepared for it. Furthermore, Billy's face now looks monstrous due to the highly skilled costume and makeup department. His lifeless eyes, dried blood, and pale white skin make him appear as a realistic, yet ghostly corpse. Finally, the visuals work in collaboration with the sound effects to shock the audience. We hear the sickening sound of Billy's corpse hitting the tree and the predator's growl. Before we can even recover from our shock, we are forced to endure grotesque horror as we see the alien's clawed hand reach into Billy's back and tear out his spine. After kicking his discarded corpse away, the jungle hunter begins to polish his trophy by removing all the remaining blood from the skull. This moment would be higher up on my list, however it is a little short in duration. Despite this, however, it does leave one hell of a lasting effect. At number 3, I have chosen an immensely eerie sequence from Predators in 2010. The scene begins just after the protagonists have been flushed out by the Yautja dogs, however something is not right. Mombasa notices that someone is missing. Right on cue, drug cartel enforcer Cuchillo answers with a disturbing distress call, "Help me." When the group make their way through the dense vegetation, they notice that Cuchillo is sat motionless with his back to them as he continues to cry for help. His low guttural calls work with the ominous music to add to the scene's eerie atmosphere. The group approach with caution as the man shows no change in movement, vocal tone, or vocabulary. He almost seems robotic, and something seems suspicious. The audience wonder at what might have happened to this man to cause his paraplegic state. When a sympathetic Isabel approaches, Roy stops her in her tracks, suspecting that this is a trap. His suspicions are confirmed when the rock he throws is met by a bear trap-like device. Mombasa deciphers the super predator's modus operandi as a tactic he has employed himself. Wound one man, make him suffer, make him bleed, make him call out for help, and set a trap and kill those who come. Unable to help, the group decide to leave Cuchillo. However, Isabel, as sympathetic as always, decides to euthanize him and end his suffering. Cuchillo's pleas for help continue until Isabel uses her rifle to put him out of his misery. Instantly, the ominous diegetic music dies with Cuchillo and our anxiety ceases. With her good deed fulfilled, Isabel begins to walk away until she is frozen stiff by a familiar sound, the low guttural plea for assistance, "Help me." Instantly, the discordant stringed note accompanies the camera, which pans down to reveal Cuchillo's bloodied and lifeless face. In addition, we hear the clicking of a yautja to confirm the orchestrators of this plot. Isabel realizes that their presence, although unseen, is close by, and runs to join the rest of the group. The familiar yautja heat vision POV and vocal mimicry confirm their presence to the audience as the scene ends. Ironically, this scene begins with comic relief as Detective Harrigan steps out of a car filled with cannabis smoke and tells the gangsters that they should cut back on their consumption. From here onwards, however, the scene adopts a more sinister tone as Harrigan is left to walk down a dark alleyway en route to his rendezvous with King Willie, the leader of the Jamaican voodoo gang. Once the music from the car fades out, we feel Harrigan's isolation as he journeys down this alley. The whole sequence is skillfully shot like a horror movie, borrowing the classic iconography synonymous with the genre. These include the setting of a narrow dark alley with steam rising like ghostly figures, the POV camera shots with its narrow field of vision giving us the sense that anything could leap out at us at any given moment. Finally, the sound effects of Harrigan's footsteps, the hissing of the steam, and the ominous music compound our tension. Additionally, the low-angle tracking shots remind us of the possibility of the predator above. We wonder if it will jump down upon our protagonist, catching him off guard. As the camera cuts to an extreme long shot from behind Harrigan, we contemplate whether he could be blindsided by the threat. Our anxiety is not helped when the intimidating drug lord steps out from the steam to greet Harrigan. His voice has an almost snake-like hiss, and his status as a voodoo priest gives him a supernatural quality. The scene adopts a film noir style of chiaroscuro lighting, keeping both men in shadow, which adds to their mystique and continues the horror movie feel. Despite the fact that the two men are rivals, they put their differences to one side to fight a common enemy, something deadlier than any cop or drug lord. The scene's already eerie mood is exacerbated by King Willie's cryptic answers to Harrigan's questions. As a bewildered Harrigan leaves, the isolation shifts from him and settles on King Willie, who is left standing in the dark alley. The falling object startles us, and just like King Willie, we suspect the presence of the predator. The splash caused by the object foreshadows the city hunter's presence as he crashes into the pool of water as King Willie surveys the rooftops. This acts as a jump moment before the tension rises with the predator's ghostly footsteps, which punctuate his non-diegetic theme tune. As King Willie prepares for battle, the camera pans down to reveal the city hunter in a moment that seems to homage Billy's battle with the jungle hunter. The L-cut, however, allows us to hear King Willie's fate before we see it. Although we are prepared for his death, the next shot cleverly catches up to the audio track as we see his mouth open in a perpetual state of shock before we realise that the city hunter has decapitated him. The horror of this scene continues to the next as we witness the predator removing the blood and flesh from his prey's skull.
You can't see the eyes of the demon until him come calling.
For my most horrifying moment in the Predator franchise, I have chosen the subway attack, which occurs as Leona and Jerry ride the train. When tensions between the commuters run high, the Predator crashes through the roof, sending the carriage into darkness. The rapid edits between the ghostly image of the Predator, its heat vision point of view, and the panicking passengers adds to the chaos. This scene truly puts the cat amongst the pigeons as the city hunter tears through a series of armed victims. When the death count increases, Leona is forced to part without Jerry, leaving him alone with the Predator. For me, this is where the scene's true horror begins as the Predator approaches him. The dark claustrophobic setting of the train augments our feelings of dread as we see the wraith-like image of the cloak Yautja closing in on us. Despite firing multiple shots, the weapon seems to have no effect on the city hunter as it continues to close the distance and the tension reaches boiling point. Further to this, the music seems to increase in volume the closer the creature gets, which simultaneously adds to our terror. The strobe lighting effect serves to disorientate, keeping us in suspense as to what we might see. As Jerry makes his final stand, the city hunter plays the vocal recording of the child, asking, "Want some candy?" In this context, however, the words adopt a very different meaning as we hear Jerry's terrified screams before he flies across the carriage. When the train grinds to a halt, the tension returns as the passengers depart and Leona is left alone to search for Jerry. She reluctantly heads down the dark subway as the non-diegetic music regains its ominous tone. Just like the alleyway from earlier, this is another threshold space and we wonder where the Predator might be lurking. Sounds of footsteps are coupled with heavy breathing and the static camera shots draw our attention to the dark alcove spaces. We anticipate just where the Predator may pounce from as our tension rises. When Leona approaches the open door, electrical surges make us jump and remind us of the imminent danger. We are horrified at the sight of Jerry's mutilated body and the claustrophobic framing symbolises Leona's entrapment. The camera lingers on the window, making us anticipate the possible emergence of the Predator. When Leona steps back horrified, her attention is drawn away from the threat and she is shocked by the unexpected appearance of the Yautja. Again, this serves as a typical horror jump moment which shocks the audience. As the Yautja grabs the woman by the throat, we fear the worst, however she is spared by the beast due to her pregnant state. In my humble opinion, this sequence of events is truly horrifying and the most like a horror movie. Say what you want about Predator 2, but for me it has some of the most horrific moments. If you take a look at my top 5, you will notice that most of my choices are from the first 2 movies. I feel that the more contemporary sequels could learn a lot from Predator and Predator 2 and bring the horror back to the franchise. In stark contrast, however, it seems like Hollywood is hell-bent on making these movies funny. If you want to know what I would like to see in the next Predator movie, then please watch my video on that subject where I pitch my idea for a horror prequel. As always, this video is purely based on my opinion and what I find horrifying. Please tell me what your number 1 is, or are you too tough to be horrified by such things? If so, then you're a better person than me. Thank you for watching, and if you want to see more Yautja related content, then please be sure to like and subscribe if you'd like to subscribe.